back. Well, as of yesterday, January 1st, the minimum wage was increased. I think it went from $17.50 to now $20.50. And we indeed embrace this change. We know that lots will have to take place, and if anyone is in breach or going below the now standardized rate, I'm sure they would be in some serious problems. The Ministry of Labor, they're looking at this very serious, and they're here to obviously inform and to conduct that media blitz, get the conversation going so employers and employees especially, can know what's happening, especially our friends who are born here in Trinidad and Tobago, and even our friends who are from South America, whatever part of the world, you're working in Trinidad and you're collecting minimum wage, nobody can take you under the now stipulated rate. Let me welcome Paula Achaibar, Labor Inspector 2 from the Ministry of Labor, to share with us some more. Paula, great to see you and Happy New Year.
Pleasant good morning, Jason. Thank you once again for having the ministry here this morning to discuss the increase in the minimum wage.
And am I spot on? This will impact locals, people born here in Trinidad and Tobago with the coat of arms on their passport, and even our friends from far and wide who are now living here and working here legally. This is across the board, this minimum wage.
Yes, it is. It's across the board for permanent workers, temporary workers, migrant workers who are working in Trinidad and Tobago, regardless of your status. Once you're considered a worker, you're entitled to these, this change in the minimum wage.
And let me start on that tip immediately, because we'll get into the numbers just now, but for those who receive money sometimes in that envelope on a Friday, or whether it be every day, if the employer, that person who bringing them into work, and they're going below that stipulated rate, which in essence will come up to about, I saw the breakdown here, and you could go into the numbers in a few. What recourse, what can the employee do? What avenue is there to complain, to grouse your concern?
Okay, so the Labor Inspectorate Unit is the enforcement arm of the Ministry of Labor, and labor inspectors are charged with the responsibility for ensuring that employers do pay the minimum wage. Underpayment of the minimum wage is a violation of the Minimum Wages Act and its orders. And once an employee realizes that the employer is in breach by underpaying the minimum wage, they can file a formal complaint to the Labor Inspectorate Unit. We can be accessed via telephone, social media, walk-in clients. We have offices in San Fernando. We have offices in Port of Spain. We have sub-offices in Superior, in Sandy Grande, in Point Fortin, and Shogunas. So there are different avenues for an aggrieved worker to come in and lodge a complaint.
Understood. I'm looking at some of the numbers right now. I'm seeing under the new rate as of yesterday, hourly workers are $20.50 per hour. It should come up to about $164 per day, $820 per week, and we're looking at $3,553.33 per month. What workers might fall within this bracket, and how many workers will be impacted with this increase?
Well, roughly 190,000 minimum wage workers will be positively impacted by this increase in the minimum wage. Now, minimum wage workers can be found in various sectors. The retail sector, so those working in the clothing stores, the hardwares, the supermarkets, pharmacies, anybody in a retail establishment, those in the catering industry, so those working in the restaurants, the roti shops, those in the petrol filling stations, gas stations, security officers, just to name a few. The list is not exhaustive, but there are many, many persons who will be affected by this new increase in the minimum wage.
What else are the minimum wage workers entitled to?
So once you fall within the particular sector, you would also be entitled to overtime after an 8-hour day and a 40-hour work week. You would be entitled to pay special rates for working on public holidays. And based on certain industries, you would be entitled to sick leave, vacation leave. All female workers, are entitled to maternity leave as well.
Indeed. Again, I just want you to, I'll give you a chance again to elaborate on what's the, judgment or what would really deter an employer. I know you mentioned, yes, there is that source to complain and to let, the authority know that, listen, my employer is going below the now standardized rate. But what will happen to that employer if they breach, or if they continue to be in breach of the new rate? What's the worst that could take place? Give me the worst case scenario. What will the Ministry of Labor do to that employer?
Well, for starters, we do work with employers to ensure that they do comply with the legislation, the labor legislation. Failing that, these employers could be taken to the industrial court, and there are penalties for those employers who fail to comply with the minimum wage legislation. And that could be a breach of underpayment, failure to maintain records to show that you are in compliance, or denying a worker outstanding wages, wages for overtime, the correct wages for public holidays, for granting vacation leave, sick leave where applicable, even maternity leave, unauthorized deductions. There's several breaches and violations of the Act. And these employers can be taken straight to the industrial court for the court to impose fines.
And even in an informal setting where, let's say, someone is a domestic help, you know, there's no contract signed, someone steps in every 3 to 4 days, probably once a week, to just do a nice general in somebody's house, turn over the sheets, give the place a sweep and mop out, and someone, the homeowner, is giving this person crumbs, really. Does that worker also have a right, or is there representation for that worker to come and say, listen, you know, don't like how it's working out here, you know, they're underpaying me?
Of course, there is redress for those workers. As I mentioned, whether you're temporary, whether you're permanent, whether you're migrant or not, you are entitled to the minimum wage. The national minimum wage is now $20.50. And no worker in Trinidad and Tobago, regardless of status, regardless of nationality, should be paid less than that $20.50 per hour.
Yeah. Where and what means, I mean, we're having our discussion here now in the morning, Bruce, so I know you'll be doing your media blitz, but where else can employees, especially those who are working, who put that sweat, that piece into every single day, where can they go to really get more information and ensure that they are indeed informed going into their workspace?
So first and foremost, they can visit the Ministry of Labor, and this is not just for workers. Employers are also invited to visit the Ministry of Labor at Duke Street. We are at 50 to 54 Duke Street in Port of Spain. We're also at 40 to 45 St. James Street in San Fernando. Those are our two main offices. You can call us at 299-0300, option 3 in San Fernando, 285-5133, option 4. There is, of course, the website. We can also be emailed at labor.inspector@gov, that's gov.tt. And of course, there are social media platforms. We're on all social media platforms. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook.
And as you said, and I just give you a chance in the remaining time we have to just elaborate some more. Yes, the minimum wage is now to $20.50. But you would have mentioned earlier, overtime, working on public holidays, really putting that extra into the work day. Again, just break it down for us in a way we could understand, so that employers could understand where the Ministry of Labor is coming from, and employees could also know that that extra time, that extra blood and sweat and tears, there should be some kind of compensation. And of course, even some of the benefits, as you've said, regarding little vacation days and time off. I want you to elaborate a little more in that regard.
Sure, not a problem. So a normal workday is 8 hours. A normal working week is 40 hours. Workers are entitled to overtime pay once you've crossed 8 hours on a normal day and once you've crossed 40 hours on a normal working week. That overtime rate starts at time and a half for the first 4 hours, double time for the second 4 hours, and triple time for all hours after that. As I mentioned, certain sectors like the catering industry, the retail sector, the petrol filling stations, agricultural, laundry undertakings, just to mention a few, these workers are entitled to sick leave after 6 continuous months with the employer. They're entitled to vacation leave after 1 year with the employer. They're also entitled to maternity leave. Female employees are entitled to maternity leave. And again, this is applicable for nationals and non-nationals. So the Ministry of Labor does not segregate between a migrant worker or a national and say that one or the other is entitled to. They're all entitled to the same terms and conditions. They should enjoy the same terms and conditions. Again, we at the Ministry of Labor, the Labor Inspectorate Unit, we're here, can be reached on all social media platforms. You can walk in, you can reach us online, you can call us, both employers and employees for information. The inspectors do go out and conduct routine inspections, and that will be happening for the duration of 2024 as much as we can, to go into the business establishments, meet with the employers, meet with the workers, and educate both employers and employees on what their rights and obligations are.
And I'm glad you touched on that, because what are the obligations of the employers once you do that pop-up visit? You show up to the door, what you're asking for, what records, what documents you want to see to ensure that this employer is in compliance?
Correct. So employers by law should keep records. And when we say records, that should be attendance records, wage records, pay slips, anything to show that you are in compliance with the minimum wage legislation. So your hours of work, what is paid, for what deductions are taken out, because again, NIS and health surcharge are also statutory deductions by law that should be deducted and remitted. So your records basically would be your wage records and your attendance records, and anything else that can show that you are in compliance, that you're actually paying what you're supposed to be paying to the workers.
Well,
and protects the...
Understood. Will a whistleblower be protected? Someone comes and says, hey, Paula, this is what's going on, you know, behind the scenes, and you recognize that someone is trying to cheat the system. What's going to happen there?
Well, what we do is a thorough investigation. So we do speak to the employers first and foremost and gather information with respect to what terms and conditions they offer. Part of our inspection is also to look at those records as well as interviewing the staff. So it gives us a comprehensive picture of what's happening in the establishment. And from there, once we identify those breaches, we point them out to the employer and give them the opportunity to rectify. Failing which, then we could go further to the industrial court.
Understood. I'll give you the chance, as we look to wrap things up, to extend New Year's greetings to your colleagues there at the Ministry and by extension, Trinidad and Tobago. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Jason. So on behalf of the Ministry of Labor, the Labor Inspectorate Unit, the Minister of Labor, I would like to extend a happy New Year, a bright and prosperous 2024 for all of Trinidad and Tobago. Again, the Ministry of Labor is here to assist both workers and employers in order to ensure compliance. And we just want to wish you all the best moving forward, that we have a good and cordial relationship.
Thank you so much. And I would imagine more information will be readily available on the labor.gov.tt website?
Yes, it would be. That's the ministry's website as well. So information would be readily available there.
Paula Achaibar, thank you so much for coming on. And I look forward, well, at least at some point in 2024, we get a chance to touch base again.
Thank you so much, Jason, for having us here. And thanks for the opportunity to speak to Trinidad and Tobago about the changes in the minimum wage.
Yeah, very, very important conversation, especially for the migrant workers. I hope those looking on this morning know their rights, understand what's the new standard, and ensure that employers do not go below that, and they have to step it up. Have to. Let's take that pause. We come back and we get into our social media details as we work our way to the 7 a.m. news update. And again, it will be the big story, the passing of our former Prime Minister, Basdio Pandey. He passed away yesterday, New Year's Day, 2024. We come back.